All right, let's unpack something truly wild that's been making headlines out of Israel recently. We're talking about whispers, now actually confirmed reports of an ancient, almost forgotten ritual being rehearsed.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
And this isn't just some, archaeological curiosity. It's a story that connects millennia-old prophecy with modern-day geopolitics.
Exactly. It's this incredible intersection of religious belief, deep historical yearning, and really high-stakes international relations.
It really is.
And like you said, this is about way more than just finding a rare animal. It's about these deeply held beliefs and the potential global implications. It's much more than just a cow, as you'll definitely hear.
Absolutely. So our mission for this deep dive is clear for you, our listener. We're going to explore the biblical roots of this whole red heifer ritual.
Right.
We'll look at the almost unbelievable lengths people are going to fulfill it, and crucially, why its potential implications are stirring up so much conversation and, controversy right now.
And we should probably mention groups like the Temple Institute, too.
Good point. Yeah, they're a key player, Jerusalem-based group, really passionately dedicated to preparing for, the rebuilding of a Jewish temple. Their work is central here.
Definitely.
So let's start with the absolute basics then. For listeners who might not be familiar, what exactly is a red heifer? Why is it so central to all this?
It's a really interesting concept. Basically, it's an animal described way back in the biblical book of Numbers, chapter 19.
Okay.
And it's presented as part of an ancient purification rite. But the thing is, the criteria for this animal are just so incredibly stringent.
How stringent are we talking?
Finding one and then keeping it pure according to the rules. It's become this almost, mythical quest.
A mythical quest, really. What makes it so elusive?
Well, okay, for a red heifer to be considered pure, ritually pure, it has to be absolutely perfect in its redness.
Perfect redness, like completely red.
Completely. We're talking no more than 1 or 2 hairs of any other color. Even its hooves have to be red.
Wow.
It also needs to be a certain age, 3 or 4 years old. Older is okay, apparently, but younger is not.
Right.
And crucially, it must be totally free of any defect or blemish, internal or external. Nothing wrong with it at all.
Okay. Perfection seems to be the key word here.
It is, and maybe the most unique part. It must never have been used for any kind of physical labor. It can't ever have had a yoke placed upon it, not even for a moment.
Never worked at all.
Never. And that's not just like a random detail, it's symbolic. It represents its absolute purity, untouched by human use, reserved only for this sacred purpose.
Those details sound incredibly specific, almost impossibly so.
They really are.
And the ritual itself, then,
Okay.
it's quite particular, right?
Very. Once you have this perfect animal, it's slaughtered and then it's burned completely on a pyre.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. Then the ashes are collected and mixed with water from a fresh source like spring water. And this creates what are called cleansing waters. We've even seen reports suggesting that just 1 pinch of ash from the burnt red heifer mixed with 10,000 gallons from a fresh source of water can purify people from sin.
That's a powerful dilution.
It is. And the unique purpose, biblically speaking, for these ashes is for ritual purity, specifically from something called tumasmes.
Tumasmes.
Yeah, it means a defilement from contact with death. So like stepping into a graveyard or touching a corpse.
Ah, okay. So a specific kind of impurity.
Exactly. While other kinds of defilement can often be cleansed by ritual water immersion, like in a mikvah, the traditional Jewish ritual bath,
Right.
only the red heifer ashes are considered the remedy for this specific corpse defilement.
Interesting.
And what's really fascinating, even to theologians, is that rabbis actually consider the red heifer one of the greatest mysteries of the Torah.
A mystery.
Yeah, they categorize it as chukim. These are divine decrees that aren't really understood by human intellect. They just are.
So decrees you follow without fully grasping the why.
Precisely. And they even point out a paradox. The ashes purify other people, but the priests involved in actually preparing the ashes become ritually unclean themselves until the evening.
Huh. That is paradoxical. It challenges logic.
It really does.
So, okay, if these ancient requirements are so impossibly strict, how on earth do you even begin to find such an animal today?
Well, that brings us to the modern quest.
Right, and this is where an unlikely figure enters the picture. An American businessman from Texas, Byron Stinson.
That's him. An evangelical Christian, apparently, with this long-held dream, years of dreaming of a world at peace.
And he's played a really significant role in funding the search for these incredibly rare animals. He even wrote a book about it in 2024, didn't he? The Hunt for the Red Heifer.
He did. And his efforts were, well, remarkably extensive. He funded a global search operation. Yeah, including things like advertising in rancher magazines, offering pretty substantial rewards like $50,000.
Wow, serious money.
Serious commitment. And this eventually led them to find 21 potential candidates in Texas.
21. That sounds like a lot after all this talk of rarity.
Well, potential candidates. Specifically, 2 Santa Gertrudis and 19 Red Angus heifers. But then came the really hard part.
The rabbinical inspection?
Exactly. Meticulous review by rabbis, checking every single hair, every detail, plus navigating months of, red tape to get them to Israel.
Bureaucracy meets prophecy.
Something like that. But eventually, 5 of these heifers were approved and flown to Israel back in 2021. Quite an undertaking.
It really sounds like it. But Stinson's vision, it seems, extends beyond just finding these specific animals.
It seems so. His commitment appears broader, yes. He's also funded other projects over the years.
Like what?
Things like sending pastors to the Holy Land, apparently since 2007. And even funding a cleanup project at the Garden of Gethsemane site.
So a deep, long-term dedication to the region and what he sees as its prophetic significance.
That seems to be the picture, yes.
Okay, and this is where the story really takes that modern twist and jumps into the current headlines we mentioned.
Right, the practice runs.
Exactly. These recent practice ritual ceremonies. We've seen photos, even video released by Stinson himself, showing a flaming pyre.
Yeah, on a remote hilltop somewhere in northern Israel.
And there are slight variations in the reports about the exact date and location, right? Some say July 1st, 2025, others July 8th. Locations like Shiloh or Samaria are mentioned.
Correct. The specific details vary a bit depending on the source, but the core event or rehearsal seems consistent.
And these practice runs are incredibly significant, aren't they? What do they signal?
They signal serious intent. I mean, really serious. One source reported that the heifer actually used for one rehearsal was one that had been disqualified.
Disqualified? Why?
Apparently, it had a single tiny black hair found among all the red ones. So not perfect enough for the real thing, but usable for practice.
Okay.
Another source suggested maybe it wasn't suitable for other reasons, like Temple Institute rabbis finding other non-red hairs during inspection.
So either way, it wasn't the one.
Right. The key takeaway here is that this was definitely a practice. It wasn't the official ceremony to produce those purifying ashes. But it absolutely signals that the organizers are getting ready. They're, working out the logistics, the procedures. They're preparing to be prepared, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and it leads right into the next really captivating development.
Yeah.
There are reports now from some sources claiming that a perfect red heifer has finally been selected.
Ah, yes, I've seen those reports too.
There's even a specific quote going around attributed to a Rabbi Azariah Ariel. It states that of the 5 heifers originally brought over, one was indeed selected as perfect, apparently just about a month ago.
There's a catch, right?
There is. The same reports add a note of caution. They say even a heifer deemed perfect today could suddenly grow a white or black hair tomorrow and become disqualified.
Right. And conversely, one previously disqualified might shed the wrong colored hair and become valid again. It's constantly in flux.
So there's this real sense of uncertainty hanging over it.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why the Temple Institute itself is reportedly keeping pretty quiet about the full details.
That seems likely. The reports mention they're citing political sensitivities.
Okay, let's connect this to the bigger picture then.
Yeah.
What's the core belief driving this whole massive effort?
Well, if you boil it down, for certain groups, some evangelical Christians and some Orthodox or Messianic Jews, this red heifer ritual isn't just some obscure biblical footnote.
It's more than that.
Much more. It's seen as an absolutely necessary step, a prerequisite, believed to, quote, pave the way to rebuilding a Jewish temple in Jerusalem.
The third temple.
The third temple.
Yeah.
And the belief continues that this rebuilt temple would then usher in the kingdom of God, ruled by a messianic figure.
And to really grasp the depth of feeling here, you need that historical context, don't you?
Absolutely. You have to remember the Second Temple was destroyed by the Romans way back in AD 70.
A hugely traumatic event in Jewish history.
Immense. And for almost 1900 years since then, there's been this deep yearning among many Jewish people to return to Israel, to rebuild the temple, and to restore the temple service that happened there.
It's embedded in prayer, isn't it?
Deeply. Observant Jews still pray 3 times every single day, May the Holy Temple be rebuilt speedily and in our day. It's a constant refrain.
Wow.
And for many, this isn't just, a historical hope. It's seen as the direct fulfillment of biblical prophecy.
Prophecy.
Like the regathering of the Jewish people in the land, which many see fulfilled in the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948.
Okay.
And the actual building of the Third Temple itself is viewed as another major prophetic fulfillment yet to come.
And groups like the Temple Institute you mentioned, they're not just waiting, are they? They're actively preparing.
Actively. They've apparently already completed extensive preparations, things like recreating the sacred worship vessels according to biblical descriptions, crafting the priestly garments for the Levites.
Really? They have the garments ready?
That's what's reported. And even more striking, it's reported that over 500 young Jewish men who can trace their lineage back to the tribe of Levi, the priestly tribe, have already been identified and trained as temple priests ready to serve.
500 trained priests. That's incredible foresight and dedication.
It really shows the level of commitment over decades for this long-term preparation.
Okay, so what does this all mean when you look at the different religious perspectives? Because they clearly diverge quite significantly here.
They do. For Christians, the dominant view is that Jesus is the once and for all sacrifice.
Right.
The New Testament book of Hebrews, chapter 9, verses 13 and 14, actually mentions red heifers explicitly in this context.
It does? How?
It contrasts the ashes of a heifer sprinkling the unclean for, purifying the flesh with the blood of Christ, which, according to Christian belief, cleanses the conscience from dead works to serve the living God.
So for Christians, Christ's sacrifice supersedes the need for this ritual purification.
That's the general interpretation, yes. His is seen as the ultimate final sacrifice. However, for many Jews who obviously do not believe Jesus was the Messiah,
Right.
the purity obtained from the red heifer's ashes is believed to be absolutely necessary. It's seen as a foundational requirement to be able to ascend onto the Temple Mount itself and perform the commandments related to temple service.
So a fundamental difference in belief about what's required for purity and access.
Exactly. But interestingly, for many Christians, even though they don't believe they need the red heifer for their own purity, its existence, and especially the push to rebuild the temple, are seen as really crucial signs, prophetic markers.
Signs of what?
Signs related to end-time events. One source we looked at directly links the red heifer and the future temple to visions described in the book of Revelation, chapter 11, and also in Ezekiel, chapter 36, which talk about a physical temple and purification rites.
So it becomes a kind of prophetic countdown clock for them.
In a way, yes. Its appearance is seen as confirmation that things are moving according to a prophesied timeline.
So, if this ancient ritual is fundamentally about purification, the ultimate irony, isn't it, is how incredibly contentious and politically charged it's become.
It's deeply ironic, and you can immediately see why the Temple Institute is reportedly, moving quietly, not publicizing every detail.
Political reasons they mentioned.
Exactly. They apparently cite potential opposition from both within the Jewish world, perhaps from secular or non-Orthodox Jews who don't share this vision.
Okay.
And outside of the Jewish world, obviously referring to the wider geopolitical sensitivities, they don't want to hinder their progress.
And their existing restrictions too, right?
Yes, it's important to remember that the Israeli government and police currently prevent certain kinds of Jewish prayer and temple-related services on the Mount itself.
And that goes back to Moshe Dayan's decision.
Largely, yes. After Israel captured the Old City in the 1967 Six-Day War, Dayan made the controversial decision to leave the administration of the Temple Mount complex, where the mosques are, under the control of the Islamic Waqf, prioritizing Muslim access. It's been a point of tension ever since.
And that tension is, putting it mildly, we can't ignore that very serious accusation that came out after the start of the current conflict.
No, you can't. One of the leaders of Hamas explicitly accused Israelis of bringing these 5 red heifers into the Holy Land, and he linked that act directly as one of the motives behind the October 7th, 2023 attack that began the war.
Which just underscores tragically how this religious project, focused on purity, is perceived by some as a direct existential threat.
Absolutely. Especially given that the Temple Mount is the current site of the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, extremely sacred sites in Islam. The stakes, as you said, couldn't be higher.
The location itself is just inherently controversial.
Hugely controversial. Now, while the mosques currently occupy the platform, one source we saw suggested an interesting, though perhaps contentious, possibility
Yes.
that the Third Temple might not actually require destroying the existing mosques.
How would that work?
The idea proposed is that it could potentially be built slightly offset, maybe on the other side of the platform, perhaps near the Eastern Gate or Golden Gate.
The sealed gate.
The one tradition says is sealed and believed to be where the Messiah will enter Jerusalem, even though that area is currently part of a cemetery, which adds another layer of complexity.
Just layers upon layers.
Indeed.
And adding yet another surprising layer, this time on the political front within Israel. There were reports that Prime Minister Netanyahu might be feeling, well, pushed.
Pushed how?
Pushed to strengthen Israel's national, maybe even religious identity.
Yeah.
And that he might be starting to see the rebuilding of the Third Temple not just as a fringe religious dream, but potentially as something that could, quote, unite the nation.
That's a significant potential shift in perspective, if true.
Yeah, and some claims from one particular source even suggest Netanyahu might be quietly supporting the rabbis who are pushing for the temple.
Quietly supporting.
That's the claim. And then stepping outside Israeli politics, you have figures like Donald Trump and Elon Musk, who have apparently publicly stated support for Israel in, well, building the Third Temple.
International figures weighing in adds another dimension.
It does. And just to show the full spectrum of interpretations here, it's worth noting, impartially, that one source we encountered even links the future figure who helps Israel build the Third Temple to the Antichrist.
Wow. Okay, so the prophetic stakes are seen as incredibly high from multiple, sometimes opposing viewpoints.
Exactly.
That highlights the intensity surrounding this.
And what about interest levels within Israel itself?
Well, that's another fascinating point. Some observers note that Christians outside Israel, particularly in the U.S., seem far more interested in the red heifer and these specific end-time prophecies than many Jews actually living in Israel.
Really? Why would that be?
Well, the suggestion is that many Israeli Jews, even religious ones, might prefer the current forms of rabbinic Judaism. They may not actually want a return to the practices of temple sacrifice or the strict agricultural laws like the sabbatical year that would likely accompany it.
So a potential disconnect between external enthusiasm and internal priorities.
It raises an interesting question, about how religious focus and priorities can sometimes diverge between diaspora communities and those living in the land itself.
What an extraordinary mix we've unpacked here. We've got ancient prophecy, deeply felt modern religious fervor, and these incredibly intense geopolitical tensions all converging around this single image of a red heifer and the vision of a third temple.
It really is a story rooted in texts thousands of years old, but it's unfolding visibly right before our eyes in real time.
It's quite something to witness.
And it's an incredibly dynamic situation, politically volatile, religiously charged. New developments seem to be emerging, well, almost daily it feels like sometimes.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to take away from this deep dive. Just consider how these deep-seated religious beliefs, these ancient prophecies, continue to exert such a powerful, tangible influence on our modern world.
Yeah.
Shaping political decisions, international relations, even fueling conflict in ways that might seem almost unimaginable from a purely secular viewpoint. Yet they are actively, undeniably playing out right now. It's something to really think about.